What's up, everybody? Let's turn some lights on, wait for people to show up. There we go. Got good lighting this time. No laser stars coming out of the stupid ceiling. But today's video is going to be about ROing matches for NRL Hunter. So, as most of you know, or at least the ones that watch the channel, I travel all over the place, all over the United States, Canada twice, Alaska. What's up, El Gato Grande? And I have seen a lot of amazing ROs, which is a range officer, if you guys don't know. And there's a lot of benefits to it, and there's a lot of things that need to happen in order for you to be a good RO or range officer. So we'll kind of get into it. I got it broken down on some paper here, so I make sure we hit all the notes. And the reason for that is I want to make sure that I get everything. And there'll be stuff that I might miss, and you guys can definitely pop those up in the comment section. What's up, Shaggy Rifleman? And the reason for it is I had a chance to see some amazing ROs that I've seen in quite a few different places. They do a lot of ROing, and there's benefits to that. Part of it is the actual match fees. So as an RO for NRL Hunter, you can shoot it on Friday, and you have to shoot the entire match on Friday. So if it's 24 stages like in New Mexico, or somewhere in between, like 16, 18 stages, you got to complete that all that morning or all that day on Friday. Well, the actual competitors are coming in a little later. They're getting all their stuff done, like signing up and squatting and all that stuff. So when you show up to all this stuff, what's up, Abigail? The ROs are out there shooting so that they can actually be your RO on Saturday and Sunday. But I've had a chance to come across some pretty, what would be the correct word? Some pretty very inexperienced shooters. And the reason is, one, sometimes they're just helping out their buddy that may be the match director. And they just don't have the years of going through it or understanding everything. But we'll get into what you want to have. What's up, Tim Rink? What's up, Drew? And you want to understand the whole rules and concepts of NRL Hunter so that you can be a good range officer. Like I said in the past, there's some really good ones that stand out, and then there's been some pretty bad ones. So first thing I want to say is you got to understand the rules of the game in order to be basically kind of at that stage. You're in charge of that stage. So you have to have a whole understanding of how the game works, how it's scored, and all that. So you need to know the rules of the game, like when the shooter's up there and he's got all his stuff together, what he can have in his hands, what he can't have in his hands, how his gear needs to be stowed and all that stuff in order to keep it very consistent as you go throughout the day. So you need to understand the rules of the game. And that stuff you can see on nrlhunter.org. But a good example would be like your bipod. Say you have your rifle, you pick it up, you're getting ready to go, and it's still poking out. It's not stowed away. It needs to be collapsed and stowed. Or tripods need to be stowed. All that stuff needs to be. But the rules, I'm not going to get into the rules because you can find that somewhere else. How to score the actual points. Sometimes there was one place I went to that even the RO was helping out his buddy, never had RO'd, but he didn't know the point value. And this was in the beginning. This was helping the ROs to go work the stages on Friday. So you got to know how the scoring works. So a first round impact is worth 2 points. A second round impact, say you miss it on the first one, but you hit it on the second one's worth 1 point. And then after that, that target is dead. So there is no more points available. Commands, verbal commands are very, very important because there'll be times when you shoot and you're either going to get an impact or re-engage is what you want to hear. And if you don't hear one of those, you're out of your like shooting cycle now, wondering what's going on. Well, did I hit or did I not hit? So knowing the commands. So that's very important. So we'll get into it. The shooter goes up there, he shoots the target, and he hits the target. That's called an impact. So there's two things you want to hear when you shoot. Well, there's one thing you want to hear, and that's an impact. But there's two things that you're going to either hear on the first target. It's either an impact or re-engage. So I go up there, I shoot the round, and they don't say anything. Well, did I hit it or not? Like I said. So I'm either going to want to hear re-engage or impact, preferably impact, obviously, because that's a hit. And then as the commands, you're going to also, depending on your cycle and how it works, you're going to either hear next target or next position. So let's say I go up there and it's a 4 target, 1 position. I shoot, I hear impact. I go to the next target, I shoot, I miss. I hear re-engage, hopefully. Then I shoot it again. I hear impact. Move again, impact, and then impact, we'll say. So knowing what you as an RO needs to say is very, very important. Shaggy Rifleman's right. Hit the thumbs up. Appreciate that. I'm going to read the comments, but not get too distracted by the comments, because let me get all the little points first, and then I'll kind of go back and say hi to everybody. So depending on your thing, so if you have a 2 target, 2 position, 4 target, 1 position, or 1 position, 4 targets, there's times when you're going to say, let's say that it's a 2 target, 2 position. The person gets up there, he shoots, he misses. So I say re-engage. He racks the bolt again, he shoots and he misses. I'm not going to say re-engage. I want to say next target. So then that person would go to the next target. Let's say he misses again. So re-engage. And then I'm not going to say re-engage again. I'm going to say next position. So you need to know 4 things: impact, re-engage, next target, next position. Those are basically the only 4 things you need to say as an RO. All right. So equipment as an RO. I had a chance to go to a match, whether it was, 7 or in February or one of the matches recently. It doesn't really matter. The point is the information that you need to know will be in this video, hopefully. So as an RO, if you're going to shoot as an RO, there's some gear that you're going to want. If you're shooting as an RO, because there's non-shooting ROs and then there's shooting ROs. If you're a shooting RO, which hopefully you are, because you should be out there, and you get a chance to do lots of beneficial things, like 1, watch different shooters on that stage all day, see how they put together their stage, or your stage, basically. Oh, that guy used a tripod there. That guy used a triple pull with a tripod rear. That guy used the log with the bag in the front, or whatever the case is. But you get to see multiple individuals get to shoot that same stage all day long and get some good ideas, like, oh, I should try that, or oh, that doesn't look like that's going to work very well. So you get that as a benefit. So equipment as an RO is a tripod with some type of glass. Glass meaning binos, spotting scope, or sometimes 2. There was a match that as I RO'd, I brought 2 tripods. I had 2 target positions, so I had my spotting scope on one and my bino set on another. So all I had to do was basically walk over to the first target, and I could write stuff down, and then just stick my head over a little more. I could look through my binos, and I could see whether it was a hit or a miss, basically an impact. Okay, so you need something. You need some type of magnified glass in order to see the targets. And depending on what stage you're stuck on, or you've been given, or maybe you decided you wanted to run, kind of dictates whether you need a spotting scope or not. Now, we do shoot out to 1,000 yards, and it is easier to see with better spotting scope than it is a pair of binos if you have like a 1 target 4 position, but it's all the way out to say 995 yards. So that'll be on you. That'll dictate where you want to work. Now, things you're going to need on the administrative side as being an RO is you're going to need writing utensils, whether it's a Sharpie, whether it's pens, and then you're going to want a clipboard. And a clipboard works well because, 1, you have a spot to put all the scorecards, and we'll get into that ahead of time on ways to save time, especially if your stage is getting backed up. And there'll be some hints in there on ways to keep your stage running smoothly and efficiently. You're going to want a timer, of course, and whether you have a timer or NRLHunter.org. Good job, Shaggy. You're going to want maybe a backup timer. which could be your phone. If, like, say your battery dies at the end of the day, you could use that. So you need a timer, and you got to remember to switch it over. So when a team's up, you're going to change it to 6 minutes. When you have a single solo shooter, it's going to be 4 minutes. You're going to need an iPad or a phone, depending on what their scoring is, whether you use practice score or impact scoring. And I will say impact scoring is really amazing. I'm really starting to like the whole system of that, because it's live scoring, depending on how far away or if you have Wi-Fi service available. It makes it nice because you can, it's good and bad. You can be shooting your stage on Saturday if you're just a shooter, and your buddies are texting you going, "Oh, keep it up. You're doing really good. Don't screw up." I mean, that's like the last thing you want to know is it's live scoring. So you know exactly what's going on, which is really cool, especially if you can't watch, if you can't be at a match and say, one of your buddies wants to watch you shoot, not watch you, but kind of follow you and see how that's going. It can be a bonus. Practice score is a little different. Basically, we got to bring all the iPads or in, download all the information, and then it gets punched out to the internet. And then people will get their scoring for like day 1 or day 2 if everything's going well. So they're going to hand you an iPad, or they're going to say, "Hey, download impact scoring on your phone." And then the trick to that is just go to airplane mode, so you're not searching, especially if you're in really shitty service areas, so that your battery will last throughout the whole day, so you can get back. Other things you're going to want is a radio. So most most match directors will have like a cache of radios, and they're just like a GMRS kind of radio, a normal one you'd buy like wherever, that sometimes, you know, kids are playing on because there's a campground down the street, which kind of sucks. But you need a way to communicate as the match director with your ROs. Let's say I'm on stage 10. Maybe I have a four-wheeler that's coming up out of the middle of nowhere. I need to be able to make that range cold. I can instantly communicate with the surrounding things, basically stages or ROs. Hey, there's something going on. We need to stop. We need to turn this to a cold range real quick. Or if there's a target down, hey, match director, this is Rick. I'm on stage 3. I got targets that are down. And then they'll, depending on how they get there, they might have to shut down a few of the stages so that they can get a vehicle in there, whether it's a side-by-side or a four-wheeler, or maybe hike down to it in order to fix some targets. So communication. Say they don't give you a radio, you're going to want to at least have the match director's phone number if there's service, or somebody that basically whoever the match director wants you to contact. Maybe it's the guy just running around fixing targets or whatever. If they have a guy set aside for that. You're going to be in the same spot all day. You're going to get there before the shooters do. So you're going to want a chair and snacks and drinks, because you're going to be sitting there. They will provide a lunch when the lunch is making around, but you never know when that could be. So if you're a guy that likes to snack on stuff like I do, definitely bring some snacks. So having your backpack and all that, basically you kind of load it for RO, being an RO. And then when it's your shooting time, or basically the opposite, you basically take all your ammo and stuff out that you don't need, and then start throwing snacks and goodies and clipboards and pens and pencils just to make sure you got everything. Maybe even some extra batteries for your timer. All right. So how do you become more proficient at ROing? One, we talked about, is knowing all that other stuff, having the right gear at hand. But most importantly, it's about all the hours that you have behind glass, whether you're spotting your buddy shooting, whether you're shooting matches. Let's say maybe you've done a ton of different style of shooting. So you understand the concept of watching bullets fly through the air, understanding how a target can not even rock, but is impacted. One could be that the steel is super heavy, and it's a very large target. It might be really hard to see it rock. Other times it may be on a rubber like fire hose with the target at the bottom, and that thing is just sailing all over the place, and it hit. So becoming more proficient behind the glass, understanding trace, seeing all that kind of stuff is definitely going to benefit you as an RO. Hey, Smoking Cash, I snack on protein. So the more time behind the glass you have, the better and more proficient you'll be at spotting, edge hits maybe, or sometimes you'll see a bullet that hits like barely skims the edge. So you're not getting a lot of target rock, but then it kind of bounces way off of where it would be. And you'll as you get better at that, you'll know that that's an edge hit and not just a miss that's like 4 mils over. So just more time behind the glass. So if you're going to become an RO, try to spend some time behind the glass watching bullets, watching trace, and understanding what you're looking at. So what else do we got here? All right, so some ways to save time to be more proficient as an RO. The most important thing you can do as a match director, if possible, if there's enough people that have signed up for ROing, is to have 2 people at a stage ROing so you can get twice as much stuff done. Things that happen as an RO is I need to write down their score, so I need to keep track of that. I need to input it into an iPad or my computer or phone or whatever the case is, so that you have 2 copies. You have the electric copy, and then you have the scorecard so that the shooter can say, hey, I should have this on this stage. Maybe it's a 6 and it shows a 5 or whatever. And you need to sign that every time. So basically, as the RO, I'm going to score the person. Let's say it's an 8. They did a good job. They got an 8. And then I'm going to initial next to the scoring. So you got a paper backup because things happen. Electronics die. So it's always good to have 2. So don't just sign their thing. It needs to go into the computer as well. Let's see. There's going to be times when you can't have 2 people at each stage because 1, and not enough ROs signed up for the match. 2, the match director didn't want that many ROs, or 3, people cancel and now you can't have 2 people at each stage. So some of the ways of fixing that and to making things take place that will make your stage more proficient. So basically what happens is, let's say you all start off in a squad. So you signed up on Friday, or the shooters all signed up on Friday. So there's X amount of people in squad 1, 2, 3, all the way to however many stages they're doing. So they're all broken up in that group. And as you go, after you shoot, basically you're going to reload your mags, get everything dialed back to 0, all that kind of stuff, and then you're going to head towards the next stage. It's not going to be like you wait for the whole group to show up and then you guys all show up. That's not how it's supposed to be. And that's how you make backups as well. So after you're done shooting, basically get all your crap together and then head towards the next stage. So as the RO is sitting at that stage, all of a sudden you'll have, let's say, 5 people that are there. One of the ways you can save time instead of running all back and forth. So if I was to say, let's do a little drawing here. If I was to say that this box here is the flagging, and then over here, I'll show you guys this here in a second. So basically what takes place, because these are blind stages, so as you guys come up, you're going to find basically like a T-post with some type of 8.5 by 11 sheet on it, and it's going to tell you what you're looking for. 4 deer, or whatever the case is, whatever you're looking for here, buffalo, whatever animal. And then from here, we're going to meet you here at this sign and then basically talk to you guys. So remember, the stages are blind. So usually there'll be a bunch of bushes here. So you're not going to see how these guys shoot this. And this is your left and right limiters and your sighting pin there. So we're going to go over here. We're going to say, hey, how's it going? We're going to say scorecards, please. So we're going to get everybody's scorecard in order. So after you guys have shot the first match, you kind of know who you're shooting behind, who's shooting in front of you. And basically you should know the order of how you guys are going to shoot. So as an RO, I want to say, hey, can I grab all your guys' scorecards in the order that you're shooting? And then what I will do is I might give you a brief right here with, say, 5 or 6 guys. And I'm going to say, okay, your guys' left and right limiters are they're blue. Your sighting pin is orange. You have 2 positions. And I want to give you all this information here to save time. So I don't have to do this 5 times up here. I'm going to say it once and capture. It only shows 2 people, but I'm basically, whoever's there, I can tell. So now I'm down here. I got my spotting scope. I'm out of your way, wherever, over here, but I'm behind all the bushes. Now I can say next shooter after the one guy shoots, and you guys will come down to where I'm actually going to start the time. Whether it's here at the placard, it will depend on the match and how it was set up, but it may be way down a hill. You might have to hike down a little bit of a hill, and none of that walking time is on the clock. So it's a matter of, hey, next shooter, just go ahead and meet me down here. So I don't have to hike all the way back up a hill, 142 times in the day. So that'll save you a bunch of time. Now I have my clipboard. I put all the score sheets in it. I know the order of them because they were all in order when you guys handed them to me of what shooter's going what. But most importantly, I have the name of the next shooter so that I can input it into the computer, whether it's an iPad or some Google thing. I don't know all the different ones, but I'm basically going, okay, I know that Rick IY6C's up next, so I can punch him into the computer so I can either use the scorecard and write down, or I can use the computer to write down the points and then transfer it to the paper. So some of the things that I like to do, I'm not saying that this is right or wrong, but as I get older, I forget stuff. So I will write down how this works. So say this is the person's scorecard. We'll just say it's mine. It's Rick. And basically what you'll have is over here, you'll have where the RO initials, and then you'll have the stage number here, and then you'll have basically a box. And this is kind of a big box, but basically, let's say that this is stage 1 and I'm working on stage 1. As the person shoots, let's say he gets a first round impact. So that's worth 2 points. And then he misses the second target and then impacts it on his second round. Basically, you have a miss. So he got a first round impact, a miss, and then he got 1 point. So as we go through the thing, and then basically the score will go here. So let's say he got a 7. So he impact. So basically we got 6, 7. So I'll score a 7 there, and I will initial. The reason why I do it this way is I can tell that individual, because after you get done shooting, 4 minutes is a lot of time. Things get forgotten and all that stuff, and you'll be like, man, I think I got a first round impact on my second target, and I can go, no, you got a second round impact. So instead of me just putting a score here, I can tell that person exactly what took place. And I'm not saying this is right, because a lot of people will just write a 7 in the score area. But what I will tell you is I go, no, I got you right here. You did a first round impact, you missed the target, and then you got a second round impact, and then you first round. And they have a lot of trouble arguing with me, and I have a lot of trouble. I don't have to go, man, Rick, did you do it wrong? Did you question? I don't have to worry about questioning myself. So as he's moving and he's shooting all the targets, I'm not remembering the first set of couple shots that he had fired or she had fired. So it's all right there. I basically know what I have. I do the same thing with teams. Teams is basically there's another break, and you got each shooter, and then you have their score, and then a total team score over here. And it just makes it a little bit easier. We'll say if you're going to do it this way, use a type of pen that has a smaller tip on it compared to like a fat Sharpie. There's really not enough room on the scorecards to do it that way. So I would not do it that way, but I do like the way that this works. I've seen a lot of people do it as well. Just for the fact is you will know, and you can make sure it's an honest score, and you're not like taking points away from the person, because that's the last thing you want to do is take points away from the shooter. But you also don't want to give him a score that he doesn't deserve either. So let me get back to the notes here. Let's see here. Yeah, so we talked about briefing the group basically at the staging area, giving them all the information you need ahead of time. Hey guys, so I'll just pretend this is one. All right, you guys are looking for placard 13. Placard 13 has 2 coyotes looking left, or whatever the case is. And you have 2 positions. Your targets will be marked with blue paint on the rocks. So now everybody knows that information. I don't need to say it again because I'm going to say, shooter, are you ready? They're going to nod yes or no. To me, that means that they have all the information. They can still ask you, like, hey, what was the placard number? But they might have remembered everything. That gave them a chance to write it all down. They saw the placard because we were all standing in front of it. And you don't have to really worry about, let's read a question here from Josie Wills. What happens when a shooter has either of these? A misfire, an accidental discharge, are they disqualified? There's 2 things, and write that down, and we'll get into that here in a second. There's ADs and NDs. So I got it on the thing, and we'll talk about it here in a second. And I'm getting pretty close to the end of this as far as the thing, but I really wanted to get into the commands again. The commands, it seems like if you're going to RO a match, and I hope you do, I hope you get a chance to. And one of the cool things you could do is you could go to a local match anywhere that's shooting rifles and just spot bullets all day long, especially when you're not shooting. Get behind the shooter or as close as you can behind the shooter. You'll see trace of that bullet flying through the sky, and you'll see those misses. You'll see those impacts. And that will just help you, become a better shooter, and 2, you'll understand what you're looking at a little bit more than someone that's never done that before. Thank you. Appreciate it. So it's always beneficial to, one, like we talked about, be on glass as much as you can at other style of matches. Go with your buddy to the range, shoot some stuff out, to 600 or farther out, so you get a chance to really see some trace and understand the bullets, understand how targets rock. As a shooter, you should anyways. If it cranks this way really heavy, you know that you hit heavy on this side of the plate. So that, one, could be the wind pushing you towards the edge of the plate, right? So that gives you a better idea of, man, I just saw that target rock weird. Well, if you want to call it weird, but heavy to the right or heavy to the left. Now you know that you're like, you can get back on your reticle and be like, oh, I need to come over like 4/10, get that more centered up so that I'm getting a nice impact, getting the target to really do this instead of like this, right? I mean, I'm going to, hopefully you guys understand what I'm saying. So if I hit right here, it's going to make this target like on a 2, it could be hanging center like this, and it's going to do this, right? And as I center up the targets, as my bullet gets closer to the center, it's going to be doing more of this. Or if I hit over here, I guess I already did that. If I hit over here, it's basically going to be kind of doing this. You're going to be seeing this. So the more time behind the glass, the more time shooting, the more you get a chance to witness all that stuff. You're going to see that as like, okay, as a shooter and as an RO, like, oh boy, he just barely hit it off right edge or barely hit it off left edge or whatever the case is, or hit it high. There's a difference between really high centered right at the post where it's really not doing anything and you're kind of just seeing the splashing or the spalling coming straight down, or you're going to see that little poof, hopefully, of the bullet basically disintegrating. Or you're going to see like a heavy rock that could be lower towards the target. Some of these targets are very, very large. Some of them are tiny. A lot of them in NRL Hunter are shaped like a, there's going to be a head over here and a tail and some legs. This is going to be a horrible picture, but we'll make it a smiley animal. But you're going to see, because somebody had asked me, well, how big are the targets? Well, a lot of times this part here, from here to here, might only be 1 MOA, 2 MOA. And then you got this side, which, it could be 8 MOA wide. So it just depends. This is how they kind of separate an easy target from a harder target. Some targets can be huge. Sometimes there'll be a vital section that's cut out right here, and there's a flapper behind the hole, and it'll flap, telling you that you hit the vitals. So it could be a very big deer. but really all you're shooting is an 8-inch piece of plate that's in the vital section. So everything's a little different. Depends on where they bought the targets, what they're doing. I saw Justin. He had put one out where there was a sign in front of a proof sign of basically the barrel company, and one of the O's was cut out of proof, and it showed pictures of a lot of bullets hitting here. So that's kind of a cool little different thing. So basically, I had to be low enough that I could see with my reticle, right? It's because I'm basically looking at a sign with a hole in it. So basically, you're looking at this, but there's a hole right here, and you need to get your bullet through that hole, but also be where you can see it with your reticle, so you can't get too close. So there's a lot of stuff. Okay, so back to that question. What happens when a shooter has either of these, a misfire, an accidental discharge? Well, let's just go over NDs and ADs. AD, as we call it, is an accidental discharge. So if you guys have seen my video, I was in Laramie this last year, and I had an ND, a negligent discharge. They were trying to convince me that it was an accidental discharge. Yeah, it was an accidental discharge, but I was negligent in how that fired, so that makes it an ND. If you get a chance, go back to that video. It kind of breaks it up a little bit. The reasons why you can have an AD at a match compared to an ND. An ND is a negligent discharge. You're basically done shooting for the day. And I had to call it on myself. I don't know if you guys saw that video or not. But basically, I knew some point in your shooting career, if you shoot enough matches, you're going to get an ND. And that is, actually, I got a 3-gun shirt on right now. So I used to do 3-gun, different pistol competitions, team safari stuff, competition dynamic stuff. And I've been shooting for quite a while. And I've been lucky enough to never have an ND until I had the ND. So a negligent discharge is one, I'm negligent. What does that mean? That means that I did something wrong. So we'll get back into that. But an AD is an accidental discharge. And what they will do is there's times when a firing sear or a sear is when I close the bolt. And this is the reason why you guys got to know this stuff. And I'm going to do a video on it, I think, or maybe I'll just lump it in with this one. I saw a lot of people at a certain place do stuff that I'm like, man, it's like this zone we're in or something. There's a lot of hunters or new shooters, and they don't understand this concept of skyloading. Skyloading is when basically I am not on target and I close the bolt, but I just racked a new bullet in, but I'm not on target, right? So I have it up in the air. You kind of see it with all the old hunters where they just close the bolt and then they get on target and they're looking around or whatever. That is considered skyloading. So skyloading, even NRL Hunter takes it another step further. And that is you need to be behind your glass, meaning I'm looking through my reticle or my scope, looking at the target. I'm on target. So if I close the bolt and it accidentally discharges because I wasn't ready, it's going to go straight towards that target. I might not hit the target, but I know that it's going to be right near the target. And that's kind of what I did with the ND, but it wasn't the equipment failure. It was a rig problem. It was a shooter problem. So that's where we get to the accidental discharge. And accidental discharges is I close the bolt. I'm looking through the thing. So this is why it's so important from the old hunter style people where they close the bolt. If I have an AD right there, accidental discharge because my firing pin was my trigger was too light or whatever the case was, and I close it, and my bullets or my rifle's pointed up into the sky, I could be sending that bullet into the next town over and hurt somebody. So an accidental discharge, as it should be done, is I'm behind the rifle, I'm looking through the scope, and I close the bolt, and it fires because, one, I have a bad trigger. So that is an accidental discharge. One, you're going to get a 0 for that stage. And two, I have to prove it again. So your RO is going to grab your rifle, call the match director, and we're going to try to make that happen again. And that's going to mean that if it does happen again, we know that your equipment was the issue, not the shooter. That will we'll be able to, if you have one or somebody has one, we can swap that trigger out, maybe do some equipment fixing, whatever the case is, so that it doesn't do it again. So AD is basically equipment failure. Accidental, yeah, but what's accidental? So the terminology is kind of the thing, but basically equipment failure made you get an accidental discharge. You would get a 0 on that stage instead of being kicked off for the whole match. And a negligent discharge is, I could never get that. Let's just say I could never get that to do it again. I knew I had screwed up, but let's say I could not get that because I'm like, oh, it was my trigger. My trigger was too light and it did it. Well, when they come to do that again, they're going to tell you that you're an idiot because it hasn't happened. And I just ran 2 magazines through here and I never got it to do it again. That means, one, you somehow, as I was closing the bolt, my booger finger, my booger hooker, smacked that trigger. So that's how you tell the difference between an AD, an accidental discharge, and a negligent discharge. That was a great question, though. If you guys got any more of those, that was really good. As you guys are maybe coming up with questions or whatever, let's see. Caffeine is a great reduce headaches, migraines, hydration. That being said, to pack. Yeah, water is very important when you're out there. I'll have one of these out there in my backpack. And the reason why is if I'm very dependent on caffeine. People will get shaky because they're drinking caffeine. But if you're professional, caffeine, sweet tea drinker like I am, you need to have some of that or you get horrible headaches. What's up, Vanessa? So if you're thinking about ROing, let's say PRS matches or whatever, and I want to keep this really close to the NRL Hunter world because the rules are a little different. And then some of the commands are different. Know what you're supposed to be doing and how you're supposed to be doing that. Whether you're supposed to say impact, whether you're not supposed to say anything like miss, or like people will come up with their own verbiage depending on what style match you're shooting. There is no their own verbiage. You should be using the correct verbiage. And for right now, as far as I know, impact, re-engage, next target, next position are basically the only thing you should know. I did not do any fishing while in Alaska. I did the year before when I was in Alaska, but it wasn't for a match. I actually went out there for 3 weeks to actually have some fun. Let's see here. Other than that, that's basically it, unless you guys have some questions. The point of the video, and some of you guys are never going to want to RO a match, but some of the benefits of watching people shoot is, like I talked about, understanding the trace of the bullet, understanding you can see it fly all the way to the target and where it hits sometimes. A lot of it depends on the weather, or to make it easier, depends on the weather. But the more you do that, the more you practice, the more you watch, the more you shoot, the better you'll become at spotting your hits, other people's hits. And that definitely helps. So to break it down, if you're going to become an RO, understand the rules of whatever game you're playing. Understand the point values and how it works. Understand the verbal commands. The equipment you're going to need as an RO. What else did I hit on? And I hit this one pretty good. The more time behind the glass, the better. Understanding how targets rock and how things work. When it comes to heavy targets, you might not see a big rock like we talked about. And ways to save time as an RO. There's always a stage, unfortunately, where it gets really backed up. The ways it gets backed up is, one, the RO is saying the same bullshit for every shooter. And it's like, okay, this is this, and that's green, and this is that, and there's your left and right limiters, and all that kind of stuff. Like ahead of time, when you got to go show them again once you get down there. So saving time, taking everybody's scorecards is a big, huge bonus. Not only will it make it faster, but it's less walking, especially if you're shooting by yourself or ROing by yourself. The benefits to having two shooters is one's doing the time and maybe spotting, the other guy's inputting on the computer and on the scorecard the scores and helping move gear out of the way. There's a lot of times when you're like, the shooter will have to run into like this big bunches of bushes area, and he's got his gear all lined up, and now he's moved over to say the fourth position, but he has a big pile of gear here. People want to find their brass, so if you have a second RO, guys can be moving the gear out of the way, putting it up towards wherever the exit is of the thing, maybe finding some of that brass to help the shooters. There's a lot of ways to help, but it all depends on one, how many ROs can you have at the stage? And so that definitely helps. Let's see. What's pretty amazing? Let's see. Watch how the really good guys shoot a stage and just how efficient they are. Build solid positions. Yeah, and I can kind of get into that. Is it Minnesota 3-gunner or MN? The more you have a chance to do this, you'll understand a lot more information. But one of the cool things, and kind of getting back to it, of being an RO is one, and the downfalls of shooting as an RO. It's been 50-50 since I've been doing this when I RO, and sometimes it's really good and sometimes it's really bad. I'll give you some examples. Example was I was at a match and ROs had a horrible, shitty, rainy day. Friday, it was miserable. Slipping all over the place, muddy, and snowy. And then Saturday, and windy. And on Saturday, it was perfect. It was a perfect day. Beautiful sky, all sunny. The targets were all lit up and it looked really good. So that was the downfall of being an RO. Now, that has flipped the other way as well. I've had it where I've RO'd a match, and it was a gorgeous day. It was a gorgeous day with no wind. And then when the shooters shot on Saturday, Sunday, it was complete crap. It was a completely different match. And there's no way to fix that. It's just going to be basically rolling the dice kind of thing. And it's either going to be great or it's not, or it might be just as even as it was Friday as it is on Saturday, Sunday. It just kind of depends. That's right, Michael Bryan. You just never know. So it's like, now the benefit to shooting as an RO, I just squeaked by this a little bit, is the match fees for the RO are kind of wiped off. You don't have to pay. So the benefit of that, some of these matches are $300, $260, $250, right in that realm. I think the Grand Slam is like $320 this year or something. So there's that window. Basically, let's just say $300 to $225. Skills division we talked about, that's usually about half the cost if you just want to try it. I'll throw that in there because I just got done doing the whole skills division video. But here's where the benefit comes in. One, you do it all in one day, which can be a hindrance. So we shot New Mexico, which was 24 stages. It was 107 degrees 2 years ago, not this last year, but 2 years ago. And it was hot as hell. And there wasn't much water. So we were dying. And 24 stages is the most we've ever seen. So it was a very, very long day. Very great match, but a long-ass day in the long heat. So you got that. That's basically not a bonus. That's a downfall of shooting as an RO, we'll say. The benefits is you're done and you get to watch everybody shoot. So the benefit A is whatever shitty weather or great weather you have, it's, and as it gets later in the day and it starts to get dark, those are some of the downfalls, because sometimes it doesn't end till, right at basically sundown. So you're like, yeah, I think you can still see the target. So there's times when you're like, I really can't see the target, but we need to shoot anyways. So there's that. So that's kind of a downfall of shooting. The benefit is you get to watch every shooter, every team go through there. So some of the things that you might want to do is, oh, you know what? Stage whatever was a pain in the ass. I had a horrible time trying to figure out what I needed to do. I'm going to RO that stage. Now, why would I want to do that? Well, now I want to see 140 shooters go through there and have to tackle figuring out how they did it. And then what you're going to benefit from that is, oh, I never thought of that. That is a great move that person just did. I never thought of that either. So you're going to see this all day, or you're going to see what I call Groundhog Day. So Groundhog Day, there was a stage in Georgia that I RO'd. Can't remember what stage it was. Doesn't really matter. But basically you came out of a building, and then it was a big mark. It was this big square, and you needed to shoot somewhere in this big square. And then you ran over to a Connex box, and there was a position 2 that you shot in. And basically what happens is when you come out of the building, the ground starts going down like this. But it's very, very slow but long. So there's a huge difference in elevation. So your first position, everybody's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna shoot a tripod right here. They shot in the corner right there. And then they get to the second target because they're on glass, say standing or kneeling. They're like, oh yeah, there's my targets. There's my other target. All right, perfect. And then they go down and they get on their bipod and they put their bipod up. And then they shoot target 1. And then they would go to target 2 and you can't see target 2 from that position. Then they're like, shit. So they'd waste a bunch of time. And then they're like, well, damn, okay, I'm going to skip it and I'm going to go to the second position. So then they go farther down the hill and you could still see target 1. So they'd shoot it with their tripod or their bipod and they get an impact. And then they'd look for that next target, which definitely isn't visible. And that happened all day. Not everybody did it. Some people knew like, hey, I need to go to a tripod standing here or a tall tripod of some sort. And they would do good on it. But I watched the same shit happen Groundhog Day after Groundhog Day. Actually, Aaron Martin and I were working that stage where like we could tell ahead of time what was going to take place. And it was frustrating to watch because you're like, as an RO, you're like, no, don't do that. You know, you want to say stuff, you can't. You can help the skills division, but you can't say anything. So I was like, gosh, it's like, damn, another guy did it. So having the ability to watch all the shooters, and as you see the newer shooters come through, and then you see some of the really seasoned, some of the real top level shooters go through, you're like, wow, that was so smooth, so fast. They found the target super easy. They set up a really good position really easy, and they had a ton of time left over. You're like, one day when I grow up, I want to do that. Drive fast, get pizza home. Drive fast, Daniel. So those are the things that benefit you as an RO. The thing is if you are going to RO these matches, please understand what you're doing and have the equipment. I went to one match. It was a brand new RO. He didn't know the scoring. There was one RO that had no magnified glass. There was an RO that had magnified glass, but he didn't have a tripod. So trying to be super stable. Now it's easy to find a target standing, right? But like say I wanted to range the target, I really need to be stable to see that. Well, in turn, that's the same way of making sure that I'm seeing an impact, because an edge impact is going to be a lot different than a center impact that really swings a target or maybe it hits one edge and rocks it. Those are easy to find. But when you get like a top of the post center, basically the guy or gal did a perfect wing call and it basically hit right where the hook is. Those are harder to judge and see. So if you have the ability to be stable on a tripod of some sort, you'll be a lot better calling the shots as an RO. There could be a time when somebody questions you. So you're going to want to call the RO or the match director. So there's times, let's say someone comes up to the stage and they're like, no, I hit first round impacts on all the targets. And I show them that whole 2-0-1 thing that I talked about earlier. I have a way of saying no, he got a 7. And I wrote everything down instead of me going, no, I remember he on his, trying to remember stuff. And now if you're a shooter and you want to argue the score or whatever, you want to do that right then. So you don't go to the next stage, complain about it more, and then finally run into the match director. Make sure you get whatever it ends up being, whether that person got the point or didn't get the point. Like me as an RO, I could give 2 shits if the guy has an 8 or a 1. Like I would love them to have high scores because I don't really care. But I'm just going to write down whatever you really scored. But you need to convince that to the shooter, like, hey, I'll give you an 8, but you didn't get an 8. Like you're like, I'm not trying, I'll give you whatever you think, or not that I'm going to give you whatever you think, but if you think you got an 8 and I got you down for a 7, let's call the match director over. Maybe we can figure something out. Because in NRL Hunter, there is no reshoots. You will never reshoot something. Oh, another thing too, which I should have wrote on my notes that I didn't, is there's times when real animals will get in the way of these targets. So what do you do if there's no reshoots, right? You're like, oh, we'll just have the guy start over. Well, that doesn't work like that. So what happens is let's say, shooter, are you ready? And time starts now. And he goes down there, or she goes down there, starts, and she or he hits the first target, and all of a sudden I'm on target 2, and I see this big old elk in the way, or right behind the target, or right next to something, or whatever type of animal. I'm going to say, we're stopping time. So I'm going to hit the stop. I'm basically going to stop the timer. That shooter is going to basically take that round out, drop the magazine, leave the rifle where it was, and then turn around and then look at me. Basically, we're going to win. And then I might say on the radio, hey, we got a herd of elk running through stage 2, headed towards 3, or whatever the case is, so that those guys are aware that we got something taking place, just to give everybody an update. And then I'll just keep checking through my binos. Maybe we're clear. Maybe those guys shooting on one of the other stages spooked them and they ran off into a safe direction. Perfect. Now I'll tell the shooter, I'll give him a couple extra seconds. I'll say, go ahead and load your magazine how you had it. Get into your position that you're on. And we are going to start time and kind of give them a couple extra seconds just to make sure everything's good. They got the mag in. They're kind of back to ready. And then I'll start the time again. I didn't add any time. I didn't have them reshoot anything, but basically they're starting where they ended off. And that's how you fix if something happens, whether it's a down target, whether it's live animals or vehicles or something that somehow scurried onto the live range. All right. Do we have any questions before I get out of here? Let's see. So we answered Outlaw Josie Wales' question. Oh, yeah, some things. We talked about caffeine, but I just noticed the headaches. Make sure you got some Advil, Tylenol kind of thing. You're going to be listening, especially depending on where you are located, to the shooters. All day you're going to hear breaks. There'll be suppressors in there, which will be nice. They call them civilized shooters. I'm not a civilized shooter. I use a break. But you're going to listen to that all day. Sometimes running double ear pro is a bonus, but you may get a headache. Take some Tylenol, Advil with you in case you need it. Other than that, I don't think I have anything else to add without just bullshitting and making this video even longer than it is. I appreciate every one of you showing up. For those of you that are watching this after the fact, after the live, leave some comments. Maybe there's something that I had missed. Maybe there's something that I should have. Maybe there's something I should have added. Put it down below so that the people watching the video can go to the comments section. And if you're not subscribed, please subscribe. If you like NRL Hunter stuff or like the channel, definitely appreciate it. You guys have a wonderful day, and we'll see you soon.